don't fall asleep in this perfect little town. My car broke down on a lonely stretch of highway I'd never driven before. The silence after the engine coughed its last sputtering breath was absolute. No birds, no distant traffic, just the whisper of wind over asphalt and the frantic, useless thump of my own heart. I spent hours walking, the sun beating down, my phone a dead weight in my pocket. And just as this thread of genuine despair started to worm its way into my brain, I saw it. A soft glow over the next hill. It was a town, nestled in a valley like a forgotten postcard. It was perfect. A little too perfect. As I walked down Main Street, I had the strangest feeling that the town had been waiting for me. The sign at the town line was carved from a single piece of dark, polished wood. Welcome to Havenwood, the perfect place to be. No population count, no founding date. Just that. The grass was an impossible shade of green, trimmed with putting green perfection. Every house was a variation of a charming clapboard cottage, painted in soft pastels, each with a pristine white picket fence and a riot of flowers blooming in the garden. Roses, tulips, hydrangeas, all growing together in a way that defied the seasons, their colors so vibrant they almost hurt to look at. There wasn't a single weed, not one piece of litter. The air smelled of cut grass, baking bread, and a faint, sweet, almost medicinal smell, like honeysuckle and bleach. The smell of absolute, unyielding cleanliness. And then I saw the residents. A woman in a sundress tending to her roses. A man in a crisp shirt washing his already gleaming car. Kids playing hopscotch. They all had the same smile. Wide, pleasant, and completely vacant, never quite reaching their eyes. As I passed, they'd look up in perfect unison, their heads tilting at the exact same angle. "Good day," they'd say, their voices a soft, harmonious chorus. Not a question, a statement. "Welcome to Havenwood." I tried to smile back, a nervous twitch that felt alien on my face. "Thanks," I managed, my voice raspy. "My car, it broke down a few miles back. Is there a mechanic in town?" The woman in the yellow sundress snipped a perfect rose from its stem, her smile never faltering. "Everything you need is right here in Havenwood," she said, her voice as smooth and sweet as honey. It wasn't an answer. I was starting to realize that answers weren't really a thing here. The feeling of being watched was a physical weight on my shoulders. It wasn't just the people. The houses themselves, with their dark, unblinking windows, seemed to be observing me. The perfect streets, the unnatural quiet, the synchronized, dreamlike movements of the townsfolk, it all fed this creeping dread that was coiling in my stomach. This wasn't just a town, it was a stage, and I had just walked into the middle of a performance that had been running for a very, very long time. Welcome to Sleepy Echoes Unwind, where the night remembers old stories. Light your lanterns, slow your breathing, and let us drift together into the hush of the night. Section 1. The Unveiling. The sun climbed higher, but the temperature stayed at a constant, pleasant 72 degrees. I found a town square, complete with a charming gazebo and a large, four-faced clock tower. The clock was beautiful, all wrought iron and gold leaf, but the hands were frozen at 5:59. I checked my own watch. 9:30 a.m. At precisely 9:35, the town began to stir with a new energy. The door to the Daily Bread Bakery opened, and a woman with that same placid smile emerged, flipping the closed sign to open. A second later, the owner of the Havenwood General Store did the exact same thing. Then the bookshop, the post office, the diner. All at once, like they were responding to some silent signal. It was like watching a meticulously choreographed dance. My hunger, a gnawing, ordinary ache, pulled me towards the bakery. The bell over the door chimed a perfect C sharp. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of yeast and sugar. Racks of bread, all identical golden brown loaves. Trays of pastries, each with the same dollop of cream, the same single, perfect raspberry on top. The woman from outside was now behind the counter. "Good day," she said, smile unwavering. "Welcome to Havenwood." "Hi," I said, trying to sound casual. "Everything looks amazing. Can I just get a coffee and one of those?" I pointed to a croissant that looked like it was sculpted from amber. She moved with an unnerving, economical grace. No wasted effort. She didn't ask if I wanted cream or sugar. She just placed 2 sugar packets and a small creamer beside the cup. She bagged the croissant in a crisp white paper bag, folding the top down with 3 sharp creases. "That'll be $2, she said. I fumbled in my wallet for a 5. Her hand was cool and dry, like porcelain. She opened an old-fashioned cash register and the drawer slid open with a soft shush. She gave me my change, 3 pristine, uncreased $1 bills. "Thank you," I said, taking the coffee. It was the perfect temperature to drink immediately. "I was wondering about that mechanic." Her smile tightened, just a fraction. It was the first change in expression I'd seen in this whole place. The pleasantness became brittle. "All roads lead to Havenwood," she chirped, her voice a little too bright. "You'll find your way." I left feeling more unsettled than ever. The coffee was good. The croissant was flaky. Objectively, the most perfect breakfast I'd ever had. And that was the problem. There were no imperfections. No slightly burnt edges, no coffee grounds at the bottom of my cup. It was sterile. I sat on a bench in the square, facing the silent clock tower. At 10 a.m. sharp, a group of about 10 children marched out of the schoolhouse in a neat 2x2 line, led by a teacher who looked just like all the other women. They proceeded to the designated play area in the park. Their play was the most disturbing thing yet. They didn't shout or run around. They just engaged in silent, repetitive games. 2 girls tossed a ball back and forth, their arms moving in a perfect, metronomic arc. The ball never touched the ground. A group of boys played marbles in a circle, taking turns in a clockwise rotation, each shot identical. There was no joy in it, no competition, just the quiet, relentless execution of a task. Then I watched, mesmerized, as one of the girls tossing the ball missed a catch. Or rather, the ball just fell. For a single, breathtaking moment, the system glitched. The girl froze, hands outstretched. The boy who'd thrown it froze. The kids playing marbles stopped. The teacher's head snapped towards the ball, her smile gone, replaced by a mask of cold, blank appraisal. The entire town square seemed to hold its breath. Then, like a switch was flipped, the girl bent down. Her movements were jerky, unnatural, like a marionette with tangled strings. She picked up the ball, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear in a gesture that looked rehearsed and hollow. She resumed her position. The boy threw the ball. The girl caught it. The game continued. The teacher's smile plastered itself back onto her face. The moment was over. But I had seen it. I had seen the crack in the porcelain. I spent the next few hours wandering, a ghost in this living diorama. I tried making conversation. In the general store, I asked the man where he got his produce. "It's a gift to the valley," he said, gesturing to a pyramid of apples, each one polished to a mirror shine. I picked one up. It was cold, unnaturally so, like it had just been pulled from a morgue, not a tree. In the bookshop, I browsed shelves of beautiful, leather-bound volumes. But when I opened them, The pages were blank. All of them. The shopkeeper, a kindly-looking old man, just smiled when I showed him. "The best stories are the ones we tell ourselves," he whispered. "Here in Havenwood, we have all the time in the world to imagine." Every interaction was the same. A pleasant but meaningless platitude, a gentle redirection, a total refusal to acknowledge the outside world or any problem, like my broken car, that might disrupt their perfect little life. They weren't people, they were recordings. Human-shaped answering machines with a limited set of responses. It was the uncanny valley. Their movements, their speech, their smiles, all just slightly off, violating some basic rule of human behavior and triggering a deep, primal sense of unease. My unease began to curdle into active fear. I was an anomaly, an unscripted element. The way they all turned to look at me, their smiles fixed, but their eyes following my every move, made my skin crawl. They weren't being welcoming. They were monitoring me. I was a foreign object in a sterile environment, and the antibodies were gathering. I needed to leave. The thought wasn't just a desire. It was a desperate, clawing need. I looked back at the main road I'd walked in on. It stretched past the perfect houses and up the hill. My only way out. I didn't care about the car anymore. I would walk. I would run. I just had to get out of Havenwood before the sun went down. I had a terrible, unshakable feeling that I did not want to see what this town looked like in the dark. Section 2. The cracks appear. My walk back towards the edge of town started casually enough. I finished my perfect, lukewarm coffee, crumpled the cup, and looked for a trash can. Of course, there was one every 20 feet, empty and freshly lined. The sound of the cup dropping inside seemed to echo in the unnatural quiet. I started walking, my pace brisk, eyes fixed on the point where the road vanished over the hill. The townsfolk I passed continued their routines. A man trimming a hedge with silent shears, a woman sweeping a spotless porch. They all offered the same "good day," the same fixed smile. I just nodded, not trusting my voice, and walked faster. The perfect houses blurred. I focused on the pavement, on the steady rhythm of my own footsteps, one foot in front of the other. The air still smelled of flowers and clean linen, but now there was something else underneath, something acrid and chemical. As I reached what I thought was the last house, a prim blue cottage, I noticed the birdbath on the lawn. It was full of crystal clear water, but there were no birds. In fact, I realized with a jolt, I hadn't seen a single bird, squirrel, or any wildlife since I'd arrived. Just the silent, smiling people. I broke into a light jog. The road ahead curved gently to the right. I followed it, expecting to see the final stretch up the hill. But as I rounded the bend, my heart fell into my stomach. Ahead of me was the town square, the gazebo, the silent clock tower. I stopped dead, panting. It wasn't possible. I'd been walking in a straight line, away from the square. I turned around, my mind reeling. The road I'd just come down was gone. In its place stood another row of identical pastel houses. The landscape had quietly, seamlessly rearranged itself behind me. Panic, cold and sharp, stabbed my chest. This had to be a trick. I was just disoriented. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the hammering in my ribs, and tried again, choosing a different street this time. Willow Lane. There were no willows. I walked with purpose, forcing myself not to run. I passed the general store, the bookshop, and a woman watering her flowers. She looked up, her smile a perfect painted curve. "Good day. Welcome to Havenwood." "I'm trying to leave," I blurted out. Her smile didn't change. Her eyes, though, seemed to lose focus for a second, like she was searching a database. "All roads lead to Havenwood," she replied, her voice a flawless recording. "You're right where you need to be." She turned back to her flowers. I walked on, frustration mounting, keeping my eyes peeled for landmarks. A red door, yellow tulips, a crack in the sidewalk, but there were no cracks. I walked for what felt like 20 minutes, my path straight and true. And then I saw it again. The gentle curve, the open space, the gazebo. I was back in the town square. A strangled cry caught in my throat. I spun around, my head swimming. It was impossible. Geometrically impossible. The town was folding in on itself, looping me back to its center no matter which way I went. It was a prison designed by M.C. Escher, a beautiful, sun-drenched cage. This time, the panic took over completely. I ran, blindly, desperately, down Elm Street. Again, no elms. My lungs burned, my legs ached. I ran past the smiling faces, their heads turning in that same eerie, synchronized way. Their collective gaze felt physical, like a net dragging me down. "Good day. Welcome to Havenwood. You're right where you need to be." The phrases followed me, a gentle, horrifying chorus. I ran until my vision blurred, until the perfect houses became streaks of pastel. I ran until I was sure I must have covered miles. And then, I rounded a corner and collapsed, my legs giving out. I fell to my hands and knees on the impossibly soft grass of the town square, gasping for air, right back where I started, at the foot of the silent clock tower. Section 3. The Failed Escape. A wave of utter, nauseating despair washed over me. I lay there on the grass, the perfect blades cool against my cheek, and I wanted to cry. But the tears wouldn't come. It was like the town's placid atmosphere suppressed even that. You don't cry in Havenwood. You smile. I pushed myself up, trembling with exhaustion. The sun was lower now, casting long, clean-edged shadows. The light was changing, shifting from cheerful yellow to a deeper honey gold. Evening was coming, and that thought filled me with a primal terror that eclipsed everything else. I looked around the square. The townsfolk were still there, but something was different. A subtle shift in their posture, an air of anticipation. The Rose Lady was now standing by her fence, hands clasped, looking towards the clock tower. The car washer was slowing down, his gaze also drifting towards the center of the square. They were waiting. The clock tower still read 5:59, but the sky told a different story. It was evening. Time for something else to begin. A new plan, born of pure desperation, formed in my mind. The streets were a lie. But what about the spaces between the houses? Could I cut through their perfect backyards and just run? Run in a straight line, trample everything, and break through the illusion. I scrambled to my feet, picked a direction, and ran. I vaulted over a low picket fence, my foot catching the top and sending a splinter of perfect white wood flying. I landed heavily in a bed of tulips, crushing their waxy petals. For the first time, I had marred the perfection of Havenwood. I expected an alarm, a shout, something, but there was nothing. They simply watched me, smiles unchanged, as if my frantic destruction was just part of the show. I ran across a perfect lawn, hurdled another fence into another backyard. I crashed through a rose bush, thorns tearing at my jeans. Pink house, yellow house, blue house, fence, lawn, flower bed, fence. The world became a frantic blur of pastel walls and manicured green. I wasn't thinking anymore, just moving, fueled by a terror so pure it was almost clarifying. I didn't dare look back. I just ran, away from the setting sun, away from the waiting square. The chemical smell of honeysuckle and bleach was stronger now, thick and cloying in the back of my throat. I must have crossed a dozen yards. I was losing strength, my breath coming in ragged sobs, but I kept going. I had to be getting somewhere. I cleared one last fence, my arms screaming, and stumbled forward. My feet hit cobblestones. I looked up, vision swimming. Before me stood the gazebo, the benches, and towering over it all, the four-faced clock tower, its hands still frozen, pointing to a minute that would never arrive. I was back. I was back in the town square. A raw, guttural noise of utter defeat escaped my lips. It wasn't possible. It defied logic, physics, sanity. The town wasn't just a loop. It was a conscious entity. It was playing with me. It had let me run, let me exhaust myself, only to deposit me back at the start, a rat in a maze with no exit. I fell to my knees again, and as I looked up at the clock tower, I saw it, the minute hand. It trembled. It vibrated with a low, resonant hum that I could feel in my teeth. And then, with an impossibly loud, grinding click that echoed through the silent town, it moved. The time was now 6 o'clock. Section 4. The ceremony. The moment the clock struck 6, everything changed. The low hum from the clock tower now seemed to come from the very ground beneath me, a deep frequency that made my bones ache. All at once, the townsfolk stopped what they were doing. The woman with the watering can let it drop. The man with the chamois cloth let it fall. The children stood up and turned. From every street, every house, the residents of Havenwood began to walk towards the square. Their movements were no longer smooth and graceful. They were stiff, jerky, robotic. Their smiles were gone, their faces utterly blank, their eyes wide and unfocused. They moved in perfect, synchronized steps, their shoes making a soft, shuffling sound on the cobblestones. An army of sleepwalkers. They formed a perfect circle around the gazebo, leaving a wide space around me and the clock tower. Maybe 100 of them. Men, women, children, standing shoulder to shoulder, rigid bodies and blank faces turned towards me. The sun finally dipped below the imaginary hill, plunging the square into a deep twilight. And in that twilight, lights began to appear. Not from lamps, but from the houses themselves, a soft, pale, pulsating glow from every window. The humming grew louder, more intense, a physical force pressing in. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't obey. I was paralyzed, pinned to the ground by the sound and the weight of 100 vacant stairs. A path opened in the circle. A man stepped through. I hadn't seen him before. He was older, in a simple, dark suit, and unlike the others, his face wasn't blank. It was etched with a profound sadness. He walked slowly, deliberately towards me, the only one who seemed truly alive. He stopped a few feet away. The humming softened slightly. "I am sorry," he said, and his voice was real, filled with a weary, ancient sorrow. "We don't get visitors often. It has been a very long time." "What is this?" I whispered, my voice a dry crackle. "What's happening?" He gestured to the silent people. "They are sleeping," he said. "They are all sleeping, and they are dreaming of a perfect day over and over again. They are dreaming of Havenwood." He looked at the clock tower. This place, it runs on belief, on a collective dream. But a dream needs a dreamer, one conscious mind to anchor the illusion for all the others. He looked back at me, and I saw a flicker of something I recognized. Exhaustion. The same bone-deep exhaustion I was feeling. For a long time, he continued, his voice dropping, I have been the dreamer. I am the one who stays awake, the one who holds the pieces of this perfect world together while everyone else rests. I keep the roses blooming and the sun shining. I keep the smiles on their faces. A cold, horrifying realization began to dawn. But I am so very tired, the man said, a single tear tracing a path down his face. A dreamer can only dream for so long before they forget how to wake up. We need a new dreamer, one with a strong mind, a fresh imagination, one who still remembers the world outside. The circle of sleepwalkers took a single, synchronized step forward. The humming intensified, and a profound, overwhelming drowsiness washed over me. My eyelids felt like lead. The edges of my vision went soft. What happens if I fall asleep? I stammered, fighting to keep my eyes open. The sad man gave me a pitying look. You will dream, he said softly. You will take my place. You will keep Havenwood perfect. It will be a beautiful dream, and you will never, ever wake up. He stepped back, melting into the circle. I was alone again, the humming a siren song luring me into oblivion. My head swam. The faces of the townsfolk blurred into a single pale wall. The pulsating lights from the houses throbbed in time with my own fading pulse. I fought it. With every last shred of my will, I fought. I dug my fingernails into my palms, trying to use the pain to anchor myself to reality. I thought of the grit and noise of the city, the taste of bad coffee, rain on my face, anything but this perfect, sterile place. But the exhaustion was a physical thing, a heavy blanket smothering me. My head drooped, my eyes closed for just a second, and in that second, I saw it. A perfect, sun-drenched street. A woman in a yellow sundress, smiling her placid smile, and I felt the overwhelming urge to make sure her roses were blooming just right. My eyes snapped open in terror. I was losing. The humming swelled to a crescendo. The town was demanding its sacrifice. It needed its battery. It needed its dreamer. I lay on the cobblestones, the last of my strength draining away. The blank faces watched, waiting. The sad man was gone, his face now as empty as the rest. He was finally getting to sleep. And as the darkness closed in, as the perfect, awful dream of Havenwood began to pull me under, one last coherent thought echoed in my mind. A desperate, silent scream against the void. Don't fall asleep. If you enjoyed this journey into Havenwood, please consider subscribing for more stories from the places that lie just off the map. Like the video if it left you feeling unsettled, and let me know in the comments what you think the ceremony is really for. Thank you for listening. Try to get some sleep.